The journey of a leader does not begin with a title or a seat at the head of a grand table. It is a path forged through every thought, every action, and every word spoken over the course of a lifetime. In the quiet moments of reflection, one might realize that everything they have experienced, the triumphs and the crushing defeats alike, has been a form of preparation for the role they hold today. Whether in the home region, where a parent guides a large family through the complexities of daily life, or in the high-stakes environment of a global corporation, the essence of leadership remains remarkably consistent. It is the art of inspiring others, the discipline of organization, and the fire of motivation. From the coach of a local youth sports team to the visionary founder of a nascent startup, the weight of responsibility rests upon the shoulders of those willing to step forward. The world is in a constant state of searching, looking for individuals who can navigate the storms of uncertainty with a steady hand and a clear mind. Yet, even for those who have spent years honing their craft, the path is rarely clear. There is a profound need for better leadership in every corner of society. In the American continent and beyond, one can observe governments struggling to find a cohesive focus, not only to lead their citizens, but to maintain order within their own ranks. In the private sector, companies of all sizes are forced to confront an era of unprecedented complexity and fierce competition, where management teams often find themselves gasping for air as they chase elusive results. Even in the realm of sports, the lack of consistency is palpable, with organizations frequently discarding mentors and coaches in a desperate search for a winning formula that remains just out of reach. The public sector, too, faces its own set of trials, from strained healthcare systems to educational institutions operating at the brink of their capacity, all while the shadows of leadership scandals cast a long, cold pall over communities. When one envisions a successful leader, the mind often wanders toward figures of immense visibility and grandeur, individuals whose names are synonymous with global influence. But leadership is often found in much smaller, more intimate spaces. It is the school coordinator who sees the potential in a struggling student. It is the president of a local neighborhood association working to improve safety. It is the partner in a small business or the spouse who holds the family together during a crisis. These figures represent the true backbone of leadership. The desire to strengthen one's own capabilities and knowledge is the first step toward becoming the kind of person others admire and seek to emulate. However, a great irony exists in the world of leadership. Many possess a vast arsenal of tools and talents that remain tragically underutilized, while they simultaneously cling to weaknesses that act as invisible anchors, preventing true progress. To grow as a leader is to embark on a deeply personal quest of self-reflection. It requires a willingness to pause and consider how one wishes to develop, how they intend to inspire future generations, and ultimately, how they want to be remembered by those they guided. This process is not a sprint, but a steady accumulation of wisdom across many dimensions. It involves mastering the art of self-leadership, understanding the hidden depths of one's own motivations, and exploring the diverse styles of leadership that can be adapted to any situation. It is about shifting the very mindset and behaviors that dictate how one communicates and motivates those who follow. The journey involves navigating the jagged terrain of change and making room for new leaders to rise. The reality of leadership is that it is built upon a foundation of habits and actions that most people are simply unwilling to cultivate. It demands a level of dedication to self-improvement that can be exhausting and at times incredibly humbling. But for those who aspire to excellence, the rewards are found in the subtle shifts of perspective that allow them to see the world not as they wish it to be, but as it truly is. As the sun rises over the home region, a leader begins their day not knowing exactly what challenges await, but knowing that they have the capacity to meet them. There is a hidden danger, however, that lurks within the mind of even the most experienced leader, a subtle distortion that can turn a clear vision into a clouded one, leading even the most well-intentioned astray. This internal fog is the first true test of any leader's wisdom. In the modern landscape of work, the environment is increasingly characterized by a volatile complexity that defies simple explanation. Information flows at a staggering pace, with digital inboxes overflowing and calendars tightly packed with back-to-back meetings that leave little room for breath, let alone deep analysis. In this whirlwind of activity, the human mind, as powerful as it may be, often seeks shortcuts. It craves order in the midst of chaos and clarity where there is only ambiguity. This natural tendency, however, creates a significant risk. Even when a leader believes they are being meticulous, verifying every data point and evaluating every piece of information, they remain vulnerable to a quiet internal adversary, the biased thought. These are the distorted lenses through which we view reality, leading us to conclusions that may feel certain, but are in fact fundamentally flawed. Imagine a scenario where a new collaborator joins a team in the home region. During their first week, they are incredibly frank, open, and transparent about their processes and thoughts. It is easy for a leader to immediately label this person as permanently trustworthy and reliable. This is the first trap, a snap judgment based on a limited window of time. In the rush to manage a heavy workload, the leader stops investigating and begins to assume that this initial impression will hold true in every future circumstance. They have unwittingly created a narrative that may not survive the pressures of a long-term project or a high-stress crisis. This tendency to simplify the human experience into a single, unchanging trait is one of the most common ways that judgment becomes clouded. Consider another common occurrence. A disagreement arises regarding the direction of a new initiative. Perhaps a leader in Europe or the American continent finds themselves at odds with the company's decision to develop a specific product. Instead of maintaining an objective stance, the mind begins to filter the world, actively seeking out reasons to prove that the original disagreement was justified. Every small setback in the product's development is seized upon as evidence of a looming failure. The ego begins to crave the satisfaction of being able to say those 4 dangerous words, "I told you so." In this state, the leader is no longer looking for the truth. They are looking for confirmation. This internal drive to be right can be so powerful that it blinds one to any information that might suggest the product could actually succeed. This tension is further complicated by how individuals within a team perceive their own performance. When a project begins to falter, it is a rare and difficult thing for a team member to look in the mirror and accept responsibility. Instead, the instinct is to point the finger outward, blaming colleagues, lack of resources, or external circumstances for the failure. This creates a culture where learning from mistakes becomes impossible because the mistakes are never truly acknowledged by the person who made them. A leader who is not aware of this dynamic will find themselves managing a team that is perpetually defensive, caught in a cycle of blame that stifles innovation and growth. The struggle to maintain a clear perspective is not just a personal challenge, it is a systemic one that can infect an entire organization. The weight of these mental distortions is heavy. They act as invisible hands, nudging a leader towards decisions that are based on emotion or habit rather than fact. In an environment that demands precision, the presence of such biases is like trying to navigate a ship through a dense fog with a compass that has been secretly tampered with. The leader may feel they are heading in the right direction, but they are actually drifting further away from the truth. This realization brings us to a critical question. How can one ever be sure that their judgment is sound? The answer lies not in finding more data, but in understanding the mechanics of the mind itself and the ways it seeks to protect the ego at the expense of reality. To delve deeper into the mechanics of these mental distortions is to uncover a fascinating and often uncomfortable truth about human nature. One of the most pervasive of these is what is often called the halo effect. This occurs when a single positive trait or outcome is allowed to overshadow everything else, creating a glowing aura around a person or a strategy. If a leader sees a successful result from a specific approach once, they may fall into the trap of believing that this approach is universally applicable. They forget the unique variables of that specific moment, the timing, the specific people involved, or even pure luck. By extrapolating that one success into a permanent rule, they risk applying a solution that is ill-suited for the next challenge. It is a form of intellectual laziness that disguises itself as confidence, leading the leader to ignore the nuances of every new situation. Then there is the shadow cast by the bias of confirmation, which acts as a filter for all incoming information. It is a quiet, persistent force that whispers in the leader's ear, encouraging them to ignore the data that contradicts their existing beliefs. If they are convinced that a certain team member is incompetent, they will notice every small error that person makes, while completely overlooking their successes. This bias creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. The leader stops coaching and starts collecting evidence for a termination. Conversely, if they are overly fond of a project, they will dismiss warnings from experts as pessimism or lack of vision. This inability to accept the possibility of being wrong is perhaps the most dangerous trait a leader can possess, as it creates an environment where truth is sacrificed on the altar of the leader's ego. Furthermore, the way we perceive success and failure is often skewed by the self-serving bias. In the home region or in large international hubs, it is common to see individuals who are quick to claim credit for a positive outcome, attributing it to their own skill, intelligence, or hard work. However, when the results are poor, the narrative shifts instantly. The failure is blamed on the economy, the lack of time, or the shortcomings of others. This mental gymnastics prevents the deep, honest self-assessment required for growth. Without the ability to say, "I made a mistake in my judgment," a leader is destined to repeat the same errors indefinitely. This bias creates a wall between the leader and their team, as the team members quickly sense when they are being used as scapegoats for the leader's inadequacies. Adding to this complexity are the twin forces of optimism and pessimism. While a healthy dose of optimism is often seen as a leadership requirement, an unchecked bias toward the positive can lead to unrealistic timelines and a failure to prepare for risks. A leader may be convinced that their team will finish a project on time despite a historical record of delays. On the other hand, a pessimistic bias can be just as paralyzing, causing a leader to see only obstacles and ignore opportunities for innovation. Both perspectives are distorted. They are emotional responses disguised as objective assessments. The true challenge for a leader is to find the middle ground, the place of realistic appraisal where one acknowledges the risks without being defeated by them, and dreams of success without being blinded by it. These patterns of thought are not just individual quirks. They shape the very culture of a workplace. When a leader operates under these biases, they inadvertently signal to their team that these behaviors are acceptable. This creates a ripple effect where entire departments begin to hide their mistakes, seek only the information that pleases the boss, and ignore the reality of their situation. The emotional depth of the struggle is found in the quiet realization that one's own mind can be their greatest obstacle. It is a humbling thought that the very intelligence that brought a leader to their position of power could also be the thing that leads to their downfall, if not kept in check by a constant and rigorous practice of self-awareness.
There comes a moment in many leadership journeys where these biases converge into a single critical turning point, a climax that tests the very core of a person's integrity and judgment. This often manifests as the sunk cost fallacy, a psychological trap where a leader finds themselves unable to admit defeat because of the sheer amount of time, energy, and resources they have already invested. Imagine a leader in the American continent who has spent years and millions of currency units establishing a new subsidiary. The data clearly shows that the venture is failing and that the market has shifted. Yet, because their personal reputation and so much effort are tied to its success, they refuse to close it. They continue to pour good money after bad, convinced that just a little more time will turn the tide. This is not a strategic decision. It is a desperate attempt to avoid the pain of admitting a mistake. At this peak of intensity, the leader often finds themselves isolated, even if they are surrounded by people. The pressure to succeed and the fear of loss create a mental tunnel where only one path seems viable. This is when the herd effect or groupthink can become most dangerous. A leader might notice that other departments or competitors are implementing a specific new system or strategy. Even if there are few tangible benefits for their own business, the desire to follow the crowd becomes overwhelming. The team, sensing the leader's anxiety to keep up, may suppress their own doubts and join the chorus of approval. They move forward not because it is the right thing to do, but because everyone else is doing it. This collective abandonment of critical thinking is the precursor to many historical and corporate disasters. During such a revelation, the tension between what is real and what is perceived reaches a breaking point. The leader may find themselves standing in a meeting room, looking at a proposal that they know deep down is flawed, yet they find themselves using the same tariff structure or project plan that worked once before with a different client. This is the outcome bias in action. They assume that because a previous proposal was successful, the structure of the proposal was the reason for that success. They fail to consider that the client might have signed for reasons entirely unrelated to the pricing format. By simplifying success down to a single repeatable factor, they stop innovating and start operating on autopilot. The climax occurs when this autopilot leads them directly into a situation they are unprepared to handle. The emotional weight of such a moment is profound. It is the collapse of a carefully constructed reality. The revelation is often quiet but devastating, the realization that one has been fighting for the wrong things for the wrong reasons.
It is the moment when the "I told you so" from a colleague finally lands with the weight of truth rather than the sting of an insult. In this space of confrontation, the leader must choose between doubling down on their biases or surrendering to the facts. This is the true test of leadership excellence. It is the ability to stand in the wreckage of a failed investment or a flawed strategy and say, "I was wrong. We need to change course." This level of vulnerability is rare, but it is the only way to clear the fog and find the path forward. As the crisis reaches its peak, the leader's trajectory is redefined. If they succumb to the biases, they may maintain their ego in the short term, but they will eventually lead their organization towards obsolescence. If they embrace the revelation, they undergo a fundamental transformation. They begin to see that their value as a leader is not in being right, but in being open to the truth. This shift moves the narrative from one of control to one of discovery. The intensity of the turning point fades, replaced by a cold, clear understanding of the consequences of one's actions. The aftermath of such a realization is where the real work of leadership begins. The rebuilding of trust, the refining of processes, and the long, slow climb back toward a reality that is no longer distorted by the shadows of the mind.
In the quiet aftermath of a major revelation or a failed decision, a leader often finds themselves in a space of deep contemplation. The noise of the conflict has subsided, leaving behind the stark reality of the consequences. In the home region, or perhaps in a quiet office in Europe, the leader must now face the team that followed them into the fog. The external transformation is often visible in changed strategies or restructured departments, but the internal transformation is far more significant. There is a newfound sense of humility, a realization that the mind is not a perfect machine, but a biased observer. This settlement of emotions is where true wisdom begins to take root. The leader starts to see that every error was a lesson, and every biased thought was an opportunity to practice a new kind of discipline. The aftermath also brings a change in how the leader interacts with information. They no longer see a full inbox or a crowded calendar as mere obstacles to be rushed through. Instead, they recognize them as environments where bias thrives. They learn to slow down, to ask more questions, and to seek out the dissenting voice, that one team member who sees things differently. This shift is a direct result of understanding the bandwagon effect and the fallacies that once led them astray. By intentionally creating space for disagreement, the leader protects themselves and their organization from the dangers of groupthink. They realize that a team that always agrees is a team that is not thinking critically. The resolution of the narrative is not a return to the old way of doing things, but the establishment of a new, more resilient culture. One of the most important lessons that emerges from this period is the acceptance of mistakes as a normal part of the process. In the past, a mistake might have been seen as a threat to one's authority or a sign of weakness. Now it is viewed as a necessary data point. The leader begins to model this behavior for their team, openly discussing where they went wrong and what they learned. This transparency breaks down the walls of the self-serving bias, encouraging everyone to take responsibility for their actions without fear of retribution. The aftermath of a crisis thus becomes the fertile ground for a more honest and effective way of working. The leader learns to look at a successful outcome not as a final victory, but as a situation to be analyzed for what truly worked and what was simply good fortune. As the narrative settles, there is a clear sense of growth. The leader has moved from a state of unconscious bias to one of conscious awareness. They still feel the pull of the halo effect or the sunk cost fallacy, but they now have the tools to recognize these impulses before they turn into actions. This internal settling is like the clearing of a storm. The landscape looks different, perhaps a bit more scarred, but the air is fresh and the visibility is high. The transformations that have occurred, both in the leader's mindset and in the team's dynamics, provide a foundation for more sustainable success in the future. They are no longer chasing the win at any cost. They are building a legacy based on clarity and integrity. Ultimately, the resolution is found in the ability to step back. A leader learns to detach their identity from their decisions. They understand that a wrong decision does not make them a bad leader, but refusing to admit it does. This emotional settling allows for a more balanced perspective on the complexities of the world. In the American continent, in Latin America,
or anywhere leadership is exercised, this transition into clarity is the hallmark of a person who has truly mastered the art of leading others. They move forward with a lighter step, no longer burdened by the need to be infallible, but empowered by the commitment to be truthful. The transition toward closure is smooth, as the leader prepares to apply these hard-won insights to the next chapter of their journey.
The essence of successful leadership is not found in a series of perfect choices, but in the continuous effort to refine one's own perspective. As the story of a leader unfolds, it becomes clear that the greatest battles are not fought in boardroom meetings or through market strategies, but within the quiet confines of the mind. The ability to recognize one's own distortions, to see the halo where it glows too brightly, to feel the pull of the herd, and to resist the urge to prove one's own rightness is the ultimate skill. This journey into the heart of biased thinking is not a one-time event, but a lifelong practice. It is a commitment to seeing the world with an open mind and a willing heart, even when the truth is uncomfortable or challenges everything one thought they knew. Reflecting on the various traps that lie in wait for a leader, from the sunk cost fallacy to the outcome bias, one can see a common thread: the need for intellectual humility. A leader who is willing to step back and question their own hypotheses is a leader who can navigate any complexity. They understand that every situation is unique and that the successes of the past are no guarantee of the results of the future. This realization brings a profound sense of clarity. It allows a leader to move away from the frantic need for certainty and toward a more nuanced understanding of reality. By acknowledging that they, like all humans, see a distorted version of the facts, they become more empathetic, more patient, and ultimately more effective in their guidance of others. In the home region and across the globe, the need for this kind of leadership has never been greater. The world does not need more individuals who are certain they have all the answers. It needs people who are brave enough to admit they might be wrong. It needs leaders who value the truth over their own ego and who are willing to learn from the mistakes of others as well as their own. This philosophy of leadership is built on a foundation of constant learning and self-reflection. It is a way of being that transforms the act of leading from a burden of control into a journey of shared discovery. The lessons learned through the exploration of biased thinking provide a roadmap for this journey, offering a way to avoid the pitfalls that have claimed so many others. As this narrative reaches its conclusion, it leaves a message of quiet inspiration. The potential to become an exceptional leader exists within anyone who is willing to do the hard work of looking inward. It is a path that requires courage, for it is often easier to follow the herd or to cling to a failing project than it is to stand alone in the pursuit of truth. But for those who choose this path, the rewards are immense. They find a level of clarity and peace that is unavailable to those who are still lost in the fog of their own biases. They become the kind of leader that people do not just follow out of duty, but out of a genuine desire to be part of something authentic and meaningful.